Thank you so much for inviting me to say a few words about challenges and maybe some ideas on how to link ocean and inland waters. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Adrian Stanica. I'm Director General of the Romanian Institute of Marine Geology and Geoecology, GeoECOMA, and coordinator of the S3 research infrastructure Danubis-RI, which stands for the International Center for Advanced Studies on River Sea Systems. Very briefly, there's a long series of challenges in linking ocean to inland waters. And one of them is defining inland waters and finding means to link the ocean research in the end to the various categories of inland waters, research dedicated to various categories of inland waters. We need to keep in mind that inland waters consist of hydrographic basins, rivers with transitional environments, lakes, but also groundwater and cryosphere. On this presentation, seeing the limited amount of time, I will focus on rivers and transitional environments, less on lakes, and even less on groundwater and cryosphere. We need to take into account then when dealing with this long list of inland waters, we deal with a high complexity of environments and processes, but also with a long list and diversity of work methodologies that cover all the aspects from sampling, analyzing, data and sample storage, accessibility, and so on. These are all lessons very well known within the marine research community, but you need to take into account that the same things happen also in research on inland waters. Well, I won't refer too much on limnology, so the study of lakes, as it has much in common with other freshwater environments. And when we look, and if we look at coastal lakes, these are coastal environments, and specificities of research in coastal lakes has much in common with similar coastal researchers. And there's another point, we can't leave out the groundwater, which is crucial for survival of human species, and it badly suffers from combined effects of human interventions at climate change. At what level? From my point of view, I think we do not yet know the scale on which groundwaters are affected by our interventions and also by climate change. It's a vast sector of looking at inland waters, underground waters that need to be better studied. But as I said, I'm going to speak more about river sea systems, about inland waters, looking at rivers and transitional environments, and a few ideas about the hydrographic basins. Well, we humans have been living in hydrographic basins, probably except for few communities living in deserts, and the researchers from Antarctica, probably everybody lives in a hydrographic basin in river sea systems. And rivers have been under continuous human influences since ancient times. Human society has benefited from the riverine environments and deltas, and took advantage of the huge, vast, if you want, riches, natural riches that supported humanity to grow. But then humans also intervened and altered the environment. So you go back to the ancient Egypt, or even before Roman period, the Venetians more than 1,000 years ago were altering the river courses in order not to bring sediments into the lagoon and to contribute to clogging the lagoon. And then all the succession of major interventions throughout Europe, starting the 18th century, it's the period when humans started cutting canals, and then we have all the sorts of possible interventions. Grouping them into interventions that alter longitudinal and lateral continuity from all the series of dams, embankments, channeling, poldering, wetlands, to all the ways humans have made use of the water resources by abstraction and use in all the sorts of human activities, from agriculture, industry, and urban uses, with a major impact on quantity and quality. And of course, rivers have been connecting societies and also have been the ways from the continent to the seas in case of inland communities. And this is why we have seen the continuous deepening of navigation sectors and also damming. These are things that have changed severely the state of hydrographic basins. Of course, overuse of biological resources. And what we have so far, we can see that in spite of the scientific revolution over the past 50 or 60 years, we notice a multitude of extreme events, extreme floods and droughts that still occur with huge impacts on the society. It's true, probably the human society has forgotten its how to say, self-preservation reflexes, and has been building all over till even in the floodplains and so. But the number of extreme events has also been increasing. So what about studying hydrographic basins? Well, this is a different story in comparison with marine research. It has many things in common, but somehow I started working in early 1990s, and I've seen the marine communities getting together, working together, and becoming a very united community. Somehow, research communities in hydrographic basins are about there. I hope they won't stone me to death, but this is how I see it. It's a great fragmentation of freshwater research, probably also due to the historical causes, but because research of freshwater basins have started a significant amount of time ago, and tradition is important. But I also think that sometimes tradition can become a break in development. So freshwater research, we can consider it to be quite fragmented, either at basin scale or at national or regional levels. Yes, we have countries like France or Germany who have national policies, and you have compatible data. But if we look, we may have approved methodologies for freshwater research at basin scale or not even there. And I say this as coming from the Danube Basin, a basin that crosses 10 countries, 7 EU countries, 3 non-EU countries, and I can tell you it is extremely difficult. There are objective difficulties if we look at this. It's difficult to implement standardized working methodologies, especially in hydrographic basins shared by more countries. We have then the difficulty, or there is a difficulty, to implement some modern technologies that supported very much the marine research, such as the Copernicus program. You need to look at the precision of Earth observation and dimensions of rivers. And until the Sentinel missions, it was quite impossible to use remote sensing techniques in the study of freshwater, or quite difficult or restrained in comparison with a larger amount of applications that could be used in marine research. Then there are the objective difficulties related to the lack of coherent initiatives and networks equivalent to EMODNet and CDataNet which have been so important for the European marine community. Then there is a very important problem. It's probably human nature, but traditionally problems are pushed downstream. And we look here at cutting sediment supply to the coast with an impact on coastal erosion, having all the nutrients, discharges which end up in eutrophication, and we do not have to keep out pollutants, either traditional pollutants as well as emerging pollutants, which are extremely important. Another thing, traditionally, and this is again very important, measurements and research in freshwater stop at the contact with marine waters with no focus on transitional zones. They say it's for the sake of continuity, and we have been working here in GeoEcoma with the Danube research community, trying to push them to work together also in the transitional zone towards the Black Sea, and the first steps in doing so have been terribly difficult, again, because of tradition. Then there is another important thing, it's pace. Research from various disciplines is less used to collaborate. It's probably how the same situation that occurred in marine research 40 years ago. Probably the very high costs of marine research put researchers to work together. So the specific costs of research are important. But then there is another thing. When we work at sea, we are all more or less in the same boat. But the boats for freshwater research are generally much smaller. So this is why we have in freshwater research, we refer to sort of 3 men in a boat, if you want. So this less space also generates a different strategy in working, in sampling, in delivering programs, and so on. It's also other specificities that have brought the situation so far. Fortunately, in the past decades, we have had drivers that have pushed freshwater research towards integration and a much stronger cohesion. It's only for 22 years that the Water Framework Directive was imposed as a European policy, and this policy has made wonders in making people starting to cooperate. And then the current mission, Healthy Oceans, Seas, Coastal and Inland Waters, it was extremely important in seeing the presentation of the lighthouses. It is very important to talk to people from freshwater, making them understand that everything that goes down the drain, it will end up in the sea, and this matters. A specific point on transitional environments, talking about deltas, estuaries, and lagoons. Whilst these environments should have been the convergence between freshwater and marine research communities, these areas have lacked major investment in dedicated research for decades. There were projects, there were some programs, but it was not a strong and coherent focus on these environments. We still have difficulties in proper definition of boundaries of transitional environments, and we need to understand these, seeing the impact of extreme events, looking at floods, droughts, combinations of high waters, wind circulation, in order to understand inland and offshore limits. Transitional environments host a hugely complex set of chemical, physical, biological phenomena that we still need to better understand. And here we have the impact of human interventions and global changes. So the only solution is interdisciplinary research covering rivers, transitional zones, and the seas under their influence. Very few words, as I said, about groundwater. Groundwater has a crucial importance for us in order to survive, and also for terrestrial ecosystems. We have managed to mix up the groundwater cycles, natural cycles, either directly, either on the surface, directly through abstraction or generating pollutant intrusions. And groundwater has a significant role in inland water cycle. Coastal aquifers are also extremely important in trying to understand the interaction between freshwater aquifers and the marine waters. And here we need to focus again research, because we have not had a significant effort for standardized studies or integration with other programs. And last but not least, the cryosphere, which is covering the Antarctica, Greenland, other polar continental regions, and alpine glaciers, which is strongly affected by climate change. And we need also to take into account that looking at the extreme events, we have ice phenomena with strong impacts on human society or from human society. And this is why these are also areas that need better integrated with studies in the water cycle. So which should be the doors to cooperation? I really think from all my heart that the initiative should come from us. It should come from the marine community. And it's a clear advantage also for us. Riverine inputs mean also clearer seas. But then the marine community has a longer period of working together. We go back more than 60 years with an accelerated cooperation in the past 3 decades. There is experience in working together. There is experience in learning each other language, attracting the freshwater scientists. It will not be easy, but it needs to be taken into account. This is why we need joint research themes focusing on river sea systems, looking at these challenges. And I think that key is continuity. Promote the source to sink concept, going from water to sediments and from sediments to biota of all times, promoting in the interdisciplinarity and introducing best practice. And we have some instruments to do so. There are opportunities if JPI Oceans and JPI Waters decide to work together and launch dedicated calls. They are the priorities in Horizon Europe and the Partnership for Seas and Oceans. And last but not least, from my point of view, is the use of existing pan-European research infrastructures. So looking at the challenges, we need interdisciplinary science to deal with climate change, extreme events, climate change scenarios showing that the number and impact of extreme events will be worsening. We need to deal with multiple pressures and see how we can push on towards net zero and green recovery in a manner that goes from source to sink, crossing political boundaries. And this is why I'm very proud to briefly introduce Danubius RI, this research infrastructure initiative that I am coordinating and that we are developing now, that will support research addressing conflicts between societal demands, environmental change and environmental protection in river sea systems as a whole. We try to offer excellent interdisciplinary scientific services covering river catchments from source to the seas under the influence of the rivers, to promote and provide innovative opportunities, facilitate knowledge exchange, educate a new generation of sciences. We are building this initiative with components throughout Europe and the headquarters in Romania. As I said, Danubius RI focuses on 3 overarching challenges: water sufficiency, sediments and their management, and ecosystem health. Now, Danubius is like a puzzle that is distributed in 11 European countries with facilities dedicated to observation, analysis, modeling, and management scenarios. And this initiative is growing under the coordination, as I said, of 11 countries that host components. And We have our natural laboratories, which are super sites, which are areas of high scientific interest that host fields for experimentation, testing ideas, methodologies, sensors, and so on. We are preparing to submit documents to create Danubius ERIC. We are preparing step 2, working together with other environmental research infrastructures within the EMB community. We discuss in expanding the community with other European countries and globally. And we do have future aspirations beyond Europe. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for your patience.